I'm in South Florida to explore how agricultural runoff is changing the Everglades and the coral reefs downstream. The Everglades are one of the largest and most unique wetland ecosystems in the entire world. I want to explore the connection not only between pollution and the local environment, but how what we do here on land affects the health of marine life and coral reefs in the ocean hundreds of miles away. The Earth is a water planet. More living creatures live beneath the waves than in our world above them. But our actions above the surface are endangering the rich ecosystems below, from dead zones to acidic oceans and rising seas to vanishing aquifers. These issues threaten the very existence of life on Earth. We are embarking on a series of expeditions around the world to explore these issues, uncover the science behind what causes them, and work together to find solutions. The Florida Everglades is a vast network of lakes and marshes extending from Lake Okeechobee to Florida Bay. It's one of the largest wetlands in the world, covering an area the size of Massachusetts. From central Florida, water flows through the Everglades south to Florida Bay. Along the way, wetlands play a critical role in cleaning and storing the fresh water that animals and humans depend on for survival. But this ecosystem has been extensively re-engineered to support agricultural land for growing crops. To better understand what that means for the Everglades and the ecosystems downstream, I'm meeting up with my friend Lou Toth, Chief Scientist for the South Florida Water Management District. And to really understand the vast scale of what's happening, we need to get up in the air. What are we flying over?
This is Everglades agricultural area.
So this is all sugarcane?
All sugarcane below us.
From up here, it's clear how farming has changed this fragile ecosystem. Massive farming operations with their chemicals and fertilizers have completely re-engineered the land.
With the development and the agriculture that came in, those nutrient concentrations were elevated.
So when we talk about high nutrient loads, we're talking about nutrient loads that are coming primarily from fertilizer.
Correct.
For the Everglades.
Correct. Primarily
area.
from fertilizer.
The nitrogen and phosphorus runoff from these farms is often so high it causes eutrophication, a technical word for when the ecosystem becomes enriched with high concentrations of nutrients. This can result in what's called a dead zone, a body of water with little to no oxygen. Dead zones are one of the biggest threats to marine ecosystems, including coral reefs, worldwide. After decades of intensive farming, the state of Florida determined that the natural Everglades had to be restored. Part of that restoration includes stormwater treatment areas, which now cover over 60,000 acres.
Essentially what we're talking about here is nature's water treatment system, right? I mean, you're using nature and plants to do it as opposed to what perhaps an urban stormwater treatment system would use chemicals to try and flush out nitrogen and phosphorus. You're utilizing plants to do that, and it's a stepped process that you run the water through. So you're flowing it into these canals, flowing it into the STAs, down through the system, and then into the Everglades.
Into the Everglades. And by the time it gets into the Everglades, the phosphorus concentrations are at levels that can allow for the restoration of the Everglades.
To see exactly how the STAs function, expedition co-host Josh Carrera and I need to head out into the treatment cells. The first stage of treatment is a cell filled with runoff water that has a phosphorus level of 100 parts per billion. The thousands of cattails that have been planted here are what's called emergent vegetation, wetland plants that extend above the water's surface.
Cattail that's well adapted to living in high nutrient conditions. At the same time, it's also capable of reducing phosphorus to lower levels.
But the cattails don't remove nutrients directly.
So it's not actually the cattails that's absorbing all that phosphorus. It's the habitat that it creates in the water column with all these dead leaves and detritus that is creating an area where there can be bacteria to absorb the phosphorus out of the water column.
Exactly. By the time it leaves a cattail cell, phosphorus concentrations are lowered to approximately 50 parts per billion.
But 50 parts per billion is still too high to be released into the natural Everglades. So Josh and I head over to the next cell.
Once you've reduced the phosphorus from the first cell to around 50 parts per billion, it comes into a cell like this. It's not dominated by cattails, but this submerged aquatic vegetation.
These plants are able to take phosphorus directly from the water column through their leaf tissues. Very dense beds provide tremendous amount of surface area for periphyton. The name periphyton means attached algae. During the course of the day, these plants are actively photosynthesizing. When the plants are actively photosynthesizing, that causes the water chemistry to change. When it does that,
It binds to the phosphorus, and then it sinks.
And then it sinks.
When it leaves these cells, what is the water quality?
Our best cells that are dominated by submerged aquatic vegetation have outflow phosphorus concentrations of 10 parts per billion.
So that's almost a reduction of 90%.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
At just 10 parts per billion, the nutrient level is now finally low enough that the water can be released into the Everglades and eventually into Florida Bay and the coral reefs beyond.
High nutrients in water is also bad for coral reefs. Too many nutrients in the water can cause plants to grow algae and smother the corals. This is a really powerful reminder of just how everything is connected.